You don't get to call them your parents now. With what money did you care for them? Security, please. You disappeared. I fed them. I paid their bills. I kept them in their home. I sent you money every month. And every month I used it exactly as you instructed. I raised the faded blue service slip between 2 fingers. My mother stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Sienna stepped off the stage. Give it to me. County Commissioner Harlow Voss stared at the number printed along the bottom. Wait, she said. Where did you get that form? Sienna stopped smiling. Days earlier, I had driven home carrying 2 new house keys, and no idea why my parents were afraid to use them. The town is called Bellwether, and I came into it from the north with those 2 keys in my coat pocket, hanging from a ring with a navy blue tag. One opened the front door of a single-floor townhouse with a walk-in shower and no stairs, only minutes from the new regional branch of my company. I had rehearsed the afternoon the way I rehearse a client meeting. Park. Climb the porch steps my father had complained about for 2 winters. Hold up the keys. Take them to dinner and let my father argue about the check. Their porch light was dark. Not dim. Dark. There was a yellow notice taped inside the front window. I had audited enough accounts to recognize a utility warning from 40 feet away. My mother opened the door before I knocked, and the first thing she said was not my name. Does Sienna know you're here? The house was cold, in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. My father was in the kitchen with his back to me, heating a pot of water on a small camping stove set on top of the range. The gas service had been restricted days earlier. He had rigged a windbreak out of a cookie sheet so the flame would hold steady, because that is who he is. 73 years old, a retired city bus mechanic, and his answer to a shutoff notice was a better bracket. I opened the refrigerator without asking. Mustard. Half a jar of pickles, bread, 1 covered bowl. I put the keys on the table and told them about the townhouse. No stairs. Grab bars already installed, their name on the lease from the first day. My father looked at the keys the way a man looks at a tool that has been handed to him by someone who does not know the job. We're not taking another thing you can't afford, he said. I did not feel insulted. I felt confused. I employed 26 people. I had spent 6 years building a freight audit company that finds money other companies have already lost. And my father was standing in a cold kitchen protecting me from an expense. Dad, I said, I can afford it. That's not what we've been told. Before I could ask who told him, my mother came in carrying her purse, and the strap slid off her shoulder. A comb went across the floor, reading glasses, and a small square of faded blue paper with a carbon backing. I picked it up. Across the top it said, Willowbridge Home Visit. Service completed. Underneath a date from only days earlier. A visit category of 4 hours. The initials LC, and a long numbered code along the bottom edge. Somebody came? I asked. My father did not turn around. Nobody came. My mother took the slip out of my hand faster than a woman her age should have been able to, folded it once, and put it back into her purse. It's just paperwork, she said. Later that afternoon, a courier knocked with a certified envelope addressed to my father. He read it twice before he slid it across to me. It was a notice of an emergency guardianship hearing set for the beginning of the following week. The petitioner was Sienna Cole, my wife. She was asking the court for authority over my parents' medical decisions, their finances, and their home on the grounds that they were vulnerable adults without reliable family support. Attached, too, it was a draft letter of support from the County Commission on Aging, unsigned, with a note that it was expected to be executed following the county caregiver luncheon later that week. Days, my mother said. She told us it was so she could talk to the doctors. My father said nothing at all, which is how he says the most. I did not call my wife that night. I sat in the cold kitchen after they went to bed and made a decision. Before I asked Sienna a single question, I was going to find out exactly what she believed I did not know. In the morning, I opened my own records, because that is the only room where I have ever been fearless. 6 years earlier, when my mother came home from cataract surgery, I had set up a standing transfer into a joint account labeled Harlan and Miriam Home Support. For the first 3 years, it was $850 a month. When the company stabilized, I raised it to $1,450. I checked the total while my parents slept 11 feet away. $82,800. Every transfer cleared. Not one bounced, not one returned, not one late. Here is what I thought, and I need you to hear the arrogance in it. This is a bookkeeping problem. Sienna has debt she hid from me. I will find the hole, fill it, move my parents into the townhouse, and we will fight about it privately like adults. I wanted a private solution. That was my flaw wearing a suit. I was laid off at 32. My parents pulled money out of their retirement savings to keep me eating while I built the audit business. When the company started working, I traveled 200 days a year, and Sienna ran the house. After the surgery, she volunteered to coordinate my mother's appointments and arrange home care, and I was not suspicious. I was relieved. Within a year, I had stopped calling my parents on Sundays and started asking my wife how they were doing midweek. I had confused a completed transfer with a completed responsibility. That morning, my sister came through the door without knocking. Celeste is 39, a hospital nurse, and she lives 90 minutes away. She looked at the keys on the table and at me in my navy jacket, and she did not say hello. "You're kidding," she said. "You show up with keys." Celeste, 4 years, Garrett. 4 years I've been the one answering the phone at midnight. And now you drive in with a townhouse. She dropped a folder on the table and started pulling pages out of it, like she was proving a case, and God help me, she was. Willowbridge care summaries on letterhead, grocery delivery confirmations, an appointment calendar with my mother's eye clinic visits highlighted in pink, and a notarized 2-page statement saying Sienna Cole had served as primary caregiver for Harlan and Miriam Cole, and that the family supported a petition for guardianship. Celeste's signature was on the 2nd page under a witness line. "She sent me all of it," Celeste said, "every month. Photographs, receipts. She told me you didn't want the family calling you at work." I read the paragraph above her signature. It said the petitioner's spouse had been financially inconsistent and personally unavailable. I read it out loud. Celeste went quiet. Then she said, "That's not the wording I saw. You signed it." I signed a witness page. Her voice climbed. "Don't do that. Don't turn this into an audit. You weren't here." She was right, and I could prove she was wrong at the same time. And those two facts did not cancel each other out. I had 6 years of cleared transfers. She had 2 years of paperwork showing my wife spending money responsibly on people I had abandoned. 2 paper realities on the same kitchen table, and only one of them had photographs. Celeste took her folder and left. She did not say she believed me. That afternoon, I went line by line through the transfers. Every month, within hours of my money landing in the support account, a nearly identical amount left it. Not to a utility, not to a grocery chain. The reference field carried a merchant routing abbreviation, WBCS. Have spent my professional life staring at abbreviations like that. It was not a store, it was a business. Willow Bridge Care Services. A private senior concierge company registered in the county, offering in-home nutrition support, medication reminders, and appointment transport for older adults. Founded 18 months after Sienna began managing my parents' support. Sole owner and officer, Sienna Cole. The business address was a rented mailbox in a strip plaza. My wife owned it. And in 6 years of marriage, she had never once said the name to me. I built the comparison, the way I would build it for a client, because it was the only skill I had that was worth anything in that kitchen. 4 columns. My transfer with its timestamp. The withdrawal with its timestamp. The amount. And the visit date printed on the blue slip. My money arrived. A matching amount left within hours. Later, a blue slip appeared saying care had been delivered. That was the first true thing I learned, and it was not enough. I had proof that my wife moved family money into her own company. I did not have proof that the care never happened. Some groceries did arrive. Some appointments were scheduled. A woman with a lawyer and a clean ledger could stand in any room in Bellwether and say her husband's contribution funded professional services. And here are the service records. I showed my father the transfers that evening. Not the Willowbridge part, just the dates and the memo lines I had typed over 6 years. Dad's heater repair. Mom's eye appointment. Winter groceries. Please replace the back steps. He read them the way he used to read a work order, slowly, with one finger. Then he set the paper down and said, "Then why did you never ask whether the steps were replaced?" I did not have an answer. The back steps were 9 feet behind him, still soft in the middle, with a 2x4 screwed across the worst board by a man with arthritis in both hands. That question hurt worse than the $82,000. Money can be traced. There is no ledger for the phone call you did not make. That night, my phone did not ring. My parents' phone did. She did not call me. She called them, and she called Celeste. And by morning, the story had been rewritten in 3 houses. What she told my parents, they repeated to me almost word for word, which is how I know it, that I was under pressure from investors, that I was trying to make her responsible for losses in my business, that the townhouse was a maneuver to get them out of the house so the property could be sold. What she sent my sister was worse, because it was real. Celeste forwarded me 3 voice messages that night with no comment. My voice from different months. "Handle it, Sienna. I don't have time for every detail. I can't come home every time something goes wrong." Those were my words. Nobody manufactured them. The context was gone, but the coldness was mine, and I had put it there. Celeste called later, and for the first time she did not sound angry. She sounded frightened. "Some of the Willowbridge summaries have a second code at the bottom," she said. "County reimbursement. Why is the county paying her? If my money was funding my parents' care, why would a public agency pay for the same care a second time?" She said she would go with me to the county office in the morning, and then she made sure I understood her limits. "I'm not choosing you," she said. "I'm checking a number. Harlow Voss is 62, chair of the County Commission on Aging, and she spent most of her working life auditing a community credit union before she ever ran for anything." She recognized the format on the photocopy Celeste handed her in about 4 seconds, which told me more than what she said next. That's a service verification slip, she said. We issue them in numbered batches to approved providers. The provider documents the visit, submits the form, and the county reimburses a portion of qualifying hours. I asked whether Willow Bridge had received batches. She said yes, and then she stopped because careful people in county government stay employed. Mr. Cole, I can't open a review of an approved provider on a family disagreement. And this office is scheduled to endorse a guardianship petition later this week. That letter is a foundation recommendation, not mine alone. I asked what would change that. An original form, she said, not a copy. Copies lose the pressure marks and the batch detail. An original that documents a visit, matched against a credible record showing no caregiver was assigned that day, plus a statement from the client themselves. She looked at the photocopy again, at the prefix on the serial number, and something moved across her face that she did not explain. Bring me one original that matches one of those dates, and the support letter stops until we review it. She would only tell us the standard. Willow Bridge listed its staff on a public county provider page. Celeste found a scheduler who had left months earlier. Priya Santos refused twice by phone. On the third try, she met me in a diner off the state route, and she kept her coat on the whole time. I'm not a whistleblower, she said. I need to work in this county. She told me 3 things. That Sienna would ask her to complete the month after the billing deadline passed, meaning fill blank visit slots with caregiver initials. That twice one caregiver was listed on visits 40 minutes apart in different towns, and that, when she refused to backfill a third date, she was let go within the week. She gave me a partial staffing schedule covering about 5 months, printed at home from an export she had kept. It's not everything, she said, and I'm not standing up in front of anybody. Celeste did not speak for the first 20 minutes of the drive back. Then she said, there was a page. What page? When I signed. She said the county needed a family witness, and the last page was still being formatted. I signed the signature page. I signed a blank final page, Garrett. I thought I was helping. I thought I was covering for you because you weren't here. You thought that, I said, because I made it easy to believe. That is as close as we came to forgiving each other. The deadline was bigger than our resentment. And that had to be enough. The hardest conversation was with my parents, and it was not about evidence. My father said he would not let the town watch his family come apart. My mother said something quieter and worse, that if Sienna was exposed, my marriage would end, and it would be because of her. I did not argue. I did 4 things instead. I gave them the number of an attorney of their own, not mine, and left the room while they called. I gave them full copies of the guardianship filing, including the parts describing them as unable to manage. I put both townhouse keys in my mother's hand, and I bought them a phone that was not on the family plan Sienna administered. It was the first time in 6 years I had given my parents anything other than money. By the middle of the week, we had it. Celeste found the original email in her sent folder, with the attachment still on it. The document she had actually reviewed was a general family contact statement. It contained no language about financial inconsistency and no support for guardianship. Priya's partial schedule showed 6 dates on which no caregiver was assigned to my parents at all. And my mother came out of the pantry with an old recipe book, opened it, and took a folded blue slip out from between 2 pages of a cake recipe. It documented a 4-hour visit. It matched one of Priya's 6 empty dates. She turned it over. On the back, in her handwriting in pencil, no one came. Harlan made soup. I kept them, she said, because Sienna told me they showed how your money was being spent. I wanted to know. I laid it all out on the kitchen table the next morning and let myself believe it was over. The original slip existed with pressure marks and a batch serial, and it matched a date with no assigned caregiver. Celeste had her original attachment. Priya had a schedule. I had 6 years of transfer timestamps and same-day withdrawals to a company my wife had never mentioned owning. I called Harlow Voss. She listened for several minutes and then said she would hold the support letter until the week's review, and that if what I described held up, she would not sign it at all. Celeste agreed to submit a written correction to the guardianship clerk, withdrawing her statement, and my parents agreed to move. My father went upstairs and came down with one suitcase and set it by the front door. He did not apologize, and he did not hug me. He asked, "How far is the new place from your office?" 12 minutes. He looked at the suitcase for a while. "That's close enough to check the steps yourself." I have made more money than I ever expected to make. Nothing has landed on me like that sentence. While packing the recipe book, my mother stopped and counted the pages and counted them again. "There should be more," she said. She had kept a slip nearly every month for 2 years. There were 4 left. "Sienna came weeks ago," she said slowly. She said she was organizing our old paperwork for the doctors. I told my mother it did not matter. We only needed one. That afternoon, before my parents' suitcase ever reached my car, Sienna arrived at the house with a county social worker, a temporary care restriction notice, and a revised Willow Bridge ledger. My wife did not raise her voice one time in the next half hour. She wore a pale pink cardigan and stood in my mother's living room like a guest who had been invited. And she solved her problem with paper. She handed the social worker a revised Willowbridge service ledger. It listed substitute caregivers assigned to every one of the 6 dates on Priya's export. Different names, different initials. All of it clean, printed, dated, and internally consistent. "Staffing changes are logged in the office system," she said. "Ms. Santos left us months ago. She has a partial export from a draft schedule. It was never the record of assignment." Then she asked to see the slip. I did not give it to her. She did not need it. "If that's the one with pencil on the back," she said, "it's a voided office copy. We keep voided forms in the client binder. It documents nothing." My mother made a small sound and did not say anything. Then Sienna turned to my sister, who was standing in the doorway, and played the voice messages out loud in my parents' living room. "I don't want details. Do what you need to do. I can't come home every time something goes wrong." She let 3 sentences of my own voice do the work. Then she told the social worker in a tone of complete reasonableness that her husband had returned after many months with a lease and a spreadsheet and an accusation, and that the family was frightened. The restriction notice was the last piece, temporary, procedural, and it said that pending the hearing, any relocation of the proposed protected persons could be reviewed as an attempt to influence the proceeding. My father put his hand on the suitcase and pushed it back against the wall. "Dad, no. He would not look at me. You brought records. She brought years." By that evening, everything I had built in a few days was gone or under challenge. Priya withdrew. Sienna's attorney had sent her a letter about her employment agreement and the unauthorized retention of company data, and Priya said her name would not appear anywhere. Celeste's correction went into the clerk, and by the end of the day, Sienna had forwarded it with Celeste's own signed statement to the compliance office at Celeste's hospital, asking politely whether an employee should be endorsing and then retracting care documentation. Willow Bridge removed my sister from its advisory board that afternoon. Harlow Voss called me herself, and she was not unkind. Against a complete provider ledger, she said. A partial third-party export and a form marked void did not meet the standard she had described, and she could not delay a foundation recommendation on that basis. And my audit proved exactly one thing Sienna did not dispute. That money moved from a joint marital account I had opened and signed for into a business owned by my spouse. I had given her every legal argument she needed. I had built a private solution and handed her days of warning to replace the record. The luncheon would go forward. The support letter would be signed there. And at the beginning of the following week, a judge would read a file describing my parents as vulnerable, isolated, and cared for by a woman the county had just honored. My father asked me to leave that night, not cruelly. He said he needed the house quiet. I sat in my car outside a house with no porch light and understood that I had been fighting the wrong war. I had been trying to prove Sienna stole from me. Every column, every time stamp was about my money and my innocence. The hearing was not going to ask whether I had been robbed. It was going to ask whether my parents were still capable of speaking for themselves. I came back the next morning with nothing in my hands. No folder, no laptop. I told my parents I would not ask them to trust me and would not ask them to choose between me and my wife, because I had spent 6 years making that a fair fight. Sienna lied to you, I said, but she could only make the lie fit because I left empty spaces. Then I said the rest of it out loud in my mother's kitchen, that I called for 4 minutes at a time and counted it as contact, that I had trusted a summary from my wife instead of asking my own father a direct question, that I had treated money as evidence of love because money was the part I was good at, that I had let one person become the only bridge between my parents and me, and had not noticed the moment the bridge became a gate. My father did not forgive me. He did not say a word about it. What he said was, "Ask your question." What happened on the days those slips say somebody came? That is how we spent the morning before the luncheon. We did not look at documents. We reconstructed 6 ordinary days. One day, my father lay under the kitchen sink for an hour and a half with a pipe wrench because the trap was weeping and nobody came. Another day, the grocery order did not arrive. My mother ate toast twice, and my father drove to the corner store. On another, the neighbor, 2 doors down, took them to the eye clinic, and my mother remembered because the woman's car smelled like cinnamon, and she had to roll the window down. On another, they sat by the front window from early afternoon until nearly evening, both of them dressed, waiting. My mother made coffee in case the caregiver wanted some. Sienna called that evening and said the schedule had shifted. A blue slip arrived for that day anyway. None of those memories were dramatic. That is exactly why they were worth something. Nobody invents a story about a car that smells like cinnamon. While they talked, I worked the one part of this that was actually my profession. The county issued those slips in numbered batches, and numbers in a batch move forward with time. That is the entire point of a serial. When I laid 4 surviving originals side by side in date order, one did not belong. Its serial sat far ahead of the others. It had been pulled from a batch issued months later and written for a date months earlier. You cannot fill out a form in one season using paper the county gave you in another, unless you are writing history backward. And the same batch prefix appeared on the Willow Bridge County reimbursement entries my sister had noticed at the bottom of the summaries. I could not authenticate a county serial from a kitchen table. What I could do was assemble the exact conditions Harlow Voss had described out loud in her office and put them in front of her in a room where she could not decline to look. Celeste called the guardianship clerk, confirmed her correction was in the file, and said she would appear in person if needed. Her hospital opened an internal review that afternoon. I did not ask Priya to save my family. I sent her the 6 reconstructed dates with no argument attached, and one question. Can you tell me whether anyone was assigned? She called back later, not because of my transfers, because of her own pay stubs. One of the substitute caregivers on Sienna's revised ledger had been contracted in another county on 2 of the disputed dates, and Priya had processed the paperwork herself. I'm not going to talk about money, she said. I don't know anything about money. I'm not going to ask you about money, and I'm not innocent in this. I filled in blanks for months before I stopped. Then say that too. She was quiet for a moment. What time does it start? 2 o'clock. Once Harlow Voss signed that letter in front of the county, the recommendation went into the hearing file with the weight of an institution behind it. Early that afternoon, my sister called to tell me the ceremony had been moved up. By 1, an event coordinator had left a message on my phone stating that the luncheon was a private ticketed function and that security had been advised. By then, Sienna had already given the county her version in writing. The press packet went to 2 local outlets and to every table at the luncheon. Her years of caregiving. Photographs of grocery bags on a porch. A woman in pastel pink adjusting a blanket over my mother's knees. A line about her husband's business success in another state and his recent interest in the family property. And a paragraph calling the guardianship petition a protective measure taken reluctantly by a woman who had stayed. She had the microphone, the award, the foundation board, the security staff, my own voice on a phone, and my sister's notarized signature. I had a disputed audit, 4 blue slips, 2 frightened allies, and no promise from my parents at all. If I forced my way into that room, I confirmed every word of her packet. If I stayed away, her story became the county's official position by 2. So I stopped trying to control it, which is not a thing I am good at. I gave each person 1 job and 1 limit. Celeste would withdraw her statement publicly and say she had signed a page without reading what would be printed above it, and claim nothing about the money because she knew nothing about the money. Priya would confirm 2 facts, and no more, that she had been asked to complete months after billing deadlines, and that a caregiver on the revised ledger had been working in another county. Harlow Voss had promised nothing. She had told me a standard, and if the original reached her hands, she would look at it. My parents would decide for themselves whether to be in that room. I told them I would not drive them unless they asked. My father said he was not going. My mother said nothing at all. There was one more cost, and I nearly did not pay it. The independent accountant I brought in overnight called. If I put the full reconciliation in front of that room, it would not only show what Sienna did, it would show her failed event planning business from years back and the debts she carried out of it. Our marital accounts. 6 years of large withdrawals nobody flagged, and my signature on every authorization that made them possible. You understand what this does to you, he said. You audit companies for a living. This says you didn't audit your own house. I was right. There are clients who would read that and never call me again. The question was no longer whether I could prove Sienna wrong. It was whether I would put my own negligence into public evidence to give my parents back their voice. I told him to prepare the one-page version. Later that afternoon, my mother came out onto the porch while I was putting my jacket on, holding the original slip. "I kept it because I thought it proved you were still helping," she said. Then she turned it over, and I realized I had never read the whole reverse side. There were 4 notes on it, not one. 4 days that month, in her small, careful handwriting. No one came. Called twice. Sienna said next week. Harlan fixed supper. She had been keeping a record of her own life for 2 years in pencil, on a form that was supposed to prove she was being taken care of. She put it in my hand. "Do you want me to use it?" I asked. "I don't know yet," she said. I did not push her. It was hers. Sienna called me shortly after from a room where I could hear silverware. She was warm. She always is when she is negotiating. She offered a private arrangement. I would withdraw opposition to the guardianship after the hearing. She would permit my parents to move into the townhouse. She would repay a portion of the money over time, and all of it would be described publicly and permanently as a marital misunderstanding. "Nobody has to lose anything, Garrett." I said no. There was a pause, and then my wife said the truest thing she said all week. "Then I'll make them choose between the wife who stayed and the son who sent receipts." I walked into that ballroom alone, past a security officer who had my description, and I stopped beside the stage while my wife was accepting an award for taking care of my mother and father. "You already know what happened next." I asked her with what money. She called for security. I raised a faded blue slip between 2 fingers. My mother stood up out of the front row fast enough to scrape her chair, and Harlow Voss looked at the number printed along the bottom of that form and asked where I had gotten it. And Sienna stopped smiling. For a few seconds, I thought it was finished. It was not. My wife took the microphone back, and she did not panic, and she did not confess. "That is an obsolete copy," she said. "Voided forms are kept in a client binder. It appears to have been removed from our records without authorization, and it appears to have been written on." Then she looked at me, and she used the only weapon that has ever actually worked on me. "A bank transfer is not a visit," she said. "A memo line is not love." The room believed her. 2 women at the nearest table turned their chairs slightly away from me. Security did not move back. Harlow Voss asked everyone to remain seated and did not take a side. So I gave up the thing I had come there to protect. I did not start by accusing my wife. I stood in front of 100 people who had just applauded her and told them what I had done, that I missed my mother's follow-up appointments, all of them, that I had not been in that house in many months, that I told my wife to handle it in exactly those words more than once, and that she was telling the truth when she played my voice, that I had believed money could travel in my place, and that every dollar I sent from another state made the 2 people in the front row easier to isolate. "She took every dollar I sent," I said. "But before she took the money, I gave her something more dangerous. I gave her the space between my parents and me." I felt the room change, not toward me. It moved off her. She could no longer expose me. I had done it myself, and there is nothing left to hold over a man who has emptied his own pockets on the table. So she went at the evidence again, and this is where it nearly ended. She played one voice message through the ballroom speakers. "I don't want details. Do what you need to do." She held up my sister's notarized statement. She passed the revised Willowbridge ledger to the head table. Every disputed date filled with a named caregiver and an assigned time. Clean paper beats a spoken memory in almost every room in America. The head table started reading, and heads started nodding, and I was losing. Then my sister walked to the front of the room. Celeste did not cry, and she did not perform. She said the signature was hers, and the 2 paragraphs printed above it were not in the document she reviewed. She handed Harlow Voss her original email with the attachment. She said she had accepted summaries for 2 years, because blaming her brother was easier than admitting she almost never checked on her own parents. She withdrew her support for the guardianship petition in front of the county. Then she resigned from the Willowbridge Advisory Board out loud and added that her employer had opened a review of her conduct and that she expected to answer for it. That removed a pillar. It did not touch the money. Priya Santos spoke from the back and never came closer than the last row of tables. She confirmed she had been directed to complete months after billing deadlines, and that one caregiver on the ledger at the head table had been contracted in another county on 2 of those dates because she had processed the paperwork herself. She added that she had filled in blank slots for months before she refused, and that she was not standing there as an innocent person. Sienna called her a dismissed employee with a grievance, which was also true, and that is what made it dangerous. Priya did not overreach. "I can't tell you where the money went," she said. "I can tell you the schedule she showed this room was made after the visits were supposed to happen." Harlow Voss still did not rule. She could not. She had a contradiction, and contradictions do not suspend a provider. And then Sienna made the mistake that people like her always make, which is that she asked for one more thing. That blue form proves nothing, she said, unless the clients themselves claim the service did not happen. In 2 years, she had never once considered that they might. My mother stood up in the front row. She is 70 years old. She managed a school cafeteria for 22 years, and she walked the length of that carpet without hurrying. I held the slip out to her. She did not take it back from me. She turned, and she put it directly into Harlow Voss's hand. "I wrote on the back," my mother said, "because I thought one day somebody might ask where everyone had been." Then my father stood, and he did the thing that finished it. And it was not dramatic at all. He went through the 4 dates on the back of that form and told the room what he had been doing on each of them. The trap under the sink, the corner store, the neighbor's car that smelled like cinnamon, sitting by the front window from early afternoon until nearly evening with his wife, both of them dressed. Harlow Voss took the form to the podium light and turned it over twice. She spoke only about what her office could confirm. The form carried pressure marks, consistent with an original carbon, not a copy. The batch prefix belonged to a numbered batch issued directly to the Willowbridge Care Services provider account. That form had been submitted for reimbursement. The reimbursement had been paid, and the staffing record presented in that room did not match the submission timestamp on file with the county. "I cannot tell you today what happened to anyone's private money," she said. "I can tell you this office cannot endorse a guardianship petition while the care record supporting it is under formal review." She took the unsigned support letter off the podium and folded it into her jacket. Then she suspended future county reimbursements to Willowbridge pending review, announced that the award would not be presented, and referred the matter to the county's financial and licensing offices. She did not convict my wife. She did not recover a single dollar of mine. She confirmed facts, and that was the whole of her power. It was enough only because 4 other people had already spent something to put those facts in front of her. Sienna made her last stand, and it was the strongest argument anyone made that afternoon. She said I had authorized the joint account. She said Willowbridge had provided real assistance, and that groceries and appointments had in fact occurred. She said administrative errors in a small provider office were not theft, and that this was a marital dispute being fought in public by a man with resources. I gave me control because he trusted me, she said. Now, he wants to call that trust theft. That is why I had to open my own accounts to a ballroom. I handed Harlow Voss the one-page reconciliation my accountant had prepared. 6 years of support transfers, each with a matching same-day withdrawal to Willow Bridge. Each county reimbursement tied to its slip batch, and one blank column at the bottom, the only column that mattered. Not a single payment from that support fund had ever gone to my parents' gas company, their electric utility, their pharmacy, or a grocery account in their name. I told the room the rest of it, too, that I signed the authorizations, that the account was mine to watch, and I did not watch it, that nobody hacked anything or forged my name. I gave my wife access, I said. I did not give her permission to build a business out of my parents' need. And then Sienna reached for the blue slip in Harlow Voss's hand. That batch was supposed to be closed before the quarter ended. She said it fast, the way you correct a filing error, and I watched everyone in that room hear it at the same time. She had spent 40 minutes telling us the form was unauthorized, possibly altered, taken from her office without permission. Then she told us the batch schedule from memory, because she could not stand to see a document she controlled sitting in someone else's hand. Harlow Voss asked that the form be secured. My mother said she would like a photocopy of the back of it, please, and Harlow said yes. Sienna did not confess. She never has, and I have stopped waiting for it. My father stood up one last time and turned toward the room instead of toward her. My son should have come home sooner, he said. That's between him and me. Then he waited until the room was completely quiet, but he did not stop sending help. We were told he did. My mother told the county, on the record, that she and her husband did not consent to a guardian, and that they were prepared to say so in front of a judge. That is what actually ended it, not the audit, not the serial number. 2 people in their 70s standing up in a room where everyone had been discussing them as though they were furniture and speaking for themselves. At the hearing, Sienna withdrew the emergency guardianship petition, with the county declining to support it and the care records under formal review. There was nothing left to stand on. My parents kept legal control of their own lives, their own money, and their own house. They moved into the townhouse weeks later, and my father set conditions before he would sign anything. Their money goes into an account only the 2 of them can touch. Celeste and I both receive states, and neither of us can move a dollar. And Sunday dinner happens in person twice a month at their table, and it does not get replaced by a phone call or a transfer. I agreed to all 3 in about 4 seconds. He made me say them back to him anyway. Celeste helped carry boxes. She and my mother are working on it. She and I are working on it more slowly, and nobody has told her she is forgiven, because she is not yet. Sienna and I separated that month. There are attorneys and reviews and a licensing file, and none of it belongs in this story. Here is the only thing I actually learned. I spent 6 years auditing companies for money that disappeared, and I never once audited the silence inside my own family. My mother keeps 2 things on the small table by her front door. One is the photocopy of the back of that blue slip with 4 notes in pencil. The original is county evidence now. The other is a townhouse key on a navy blue tag. I asked her why she keeps both. One reminds me somebody didn't come, she said. The other reminds me somebody finally did. Not long ago, my father was in the next room, with a cabinet door that would not sit right, working the hinge with his thumbnail. I had my phone in my hand, and a maintenance number already pulled up. I put the phone face down on the counter, picked up the screwdriver, and knelt down beside him. For 6 years I had sent money, because I believed providing meant I was present. That afternoon, my father handed me the screwdriver without looking up. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was work we could do in the same room. So, tell me in the comments, can trust survive when someone steals not only money, but the truth between a family? And when does forgiveness become something that must be earned?